There we go. Again, my name's Chris Bircher, and today we're going to discuss some workflow techniques for Spreadsheet Link and getting some cost information out of the Revit models and into an Excel format for using for cost estimating and specifications. So we're going to go through some of those demonstrations, starting with the Revit models and how to format a few things and different ways to extract that data out of Revit into Excel. And then I'll pass it back over to Scott, and we'll talk about some of our upcoming webinars and events and answer any questions that you may have at the end of the webinar. So with that, I will jump into Revit and we will get started. So one of the things that Revit can do on its own is we can go ahead and, based off the model, extract a series of data and information based off what is drawn. For example, I can, with walls, I can go ahead and create a wall schedule and start extracting some of that information. And here I've got a list of schedules already pre-built that go through and take off some of this information. So for example, if I just did I can just do a standard wall schedule, then this gives me everything, all of exterior walls, foundation walls, generic walls that are being used, so on and so forth. And I can include whatever information that I want. And then what can be done, if I switch to a different schedule, is I can start filtering things down based off unique properties that I've defined, get material information, length, quantity, material, and a total cost. And a couple of these are calculated values that are within the Revit models. Now, so that's great, and Revit can do all of that. However, a lot of small construction groups, or any construction group really would like, is to be able to have all that data coming from Revit in one centralized location. So currently, it all resides inside of the Revit model, and I can export these reports as individual tab delimited text files. And then I can go ahead and bring them all in. I can merge everything together and make a workbook out of that, and then give it off to whomever I need to give it off to. Now, if anything changes, I got to run through that whole process again, hand them off a brand new sheet. Or if costs change, now I have to come back into Revit, edit all of my costs, and re-export all these reports. So it ends up being more of a lengthy process. So what we can do inside of Revit is build just either a basic schedule for exporting, or I can just utilize Spreadsheet Link and just start exporting some of this data on its own. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Spreadsheet Link, and we're going to start off with just doing a basic export of some wall data based on whatever I want to take off at this point. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to add walls to the list. I'm going to go ahead and start extracting some basic information here. I want area, maybe I want length. I guess at this point maybe we should do a let's try to find out how many studs I need. So I can grab length. Maybe I don't need area then, so I can remove that. And that's a pretty good start. So then what I need to do is filter out walls that are not applicable to this, like concrete walls, or maybe I just want to work with 2x4 studs or 2x6 studs in this case. So I can go ahead and add a filter to this. Here, I'll shift this up so it's easier to see. And we are going to go ahead and filter by, let's see, I can go by type name, contains 2x4, right? And I did not include type name, so I'm going to include type name in this just so you guys can see it in the list here. And then move it up a click. And over here, I've got my little preview here. So right now what it's doing is it's filtered out through the Revit model, and it's only showing me walls that have 2x4 in the type name, okay? Now, one of the things that we're going to need to do if we're going to be running a whole bunch of different calculations inside of the spreadsheets is I need to remove the unit symbols. Excel doesn't have a way to tabulate unit symbols within formulas and such very well. So if by removing it, it still puts it into decimal feet and inches. So that the values are all correct, and the math at the end of the day will all be correct as well. So by hiding the unit symbol, will update my values here and allow me to run any type of calc that I need to inside of Excel. So for now, I'll just leave it as this. And at this point, I can go ahead and hit save. And I'm going to call this 2x4 stud takeoff. Save it. It's going to ask me if I want to open it. I'm going to say yes. And here we are. So what I can do at this point is start writing the formulas that I need to tabulate the total length, and then divide that by my stud spacing to give me the total number of studs that I need, and then I can go ahead and create a cost parameter. Now I can do this live on this particular sheet. Now if I add walls, remove walls, something changes and I want to re-export this, I'm going to lose this data. So I'll have to re-input my formula again. So one of the things that I like to do is I make a separate sheet inside of this particular workbook that has all of my data in it. Now, so then at this point, what I can do is start inputting in some of this information. You know, you can break this down however you want. You know, on here, I'll type in 2x4 studs, and I can either begin with the formula right out of the gate, or I can include some additional information. You know, maybe there's a stud spacing value you want to include here. You know, however you want to input the data. So what I can do is I can begin to type my formulas here. So I've actually got this linked up on a different spreadsheet here, so I'm just going to show you how this works and copy paste it in. Okay. And oops. Tell you what, I don't know what I pasted in there, so I'm going to undo that and just re-export here real quick. Since I already had it, it makes it easy. Okay, here we go. So I'll quick make my new sheet. 2x4 studs. And in this particular column, I'll do it in column C. I can go ahead and I'm going to paste in this formula. Now the way it works, to pull stuff off of a different sheet, you need to make sure that that sheet name is clearly defined. So in this case, that particular sheet is called walls. So that's what I'm going to label this here. The next part here controls the number of rows within a particular column that need to be included, and then I've also included what my stud spacing needs to be. Okay, so it should be column D. And in this case, I was right. If I can go back to my walls tab and verify that length is column D. It just happens to start at 4 and end at 48. 86 encompasses everything. So that worked out exactly how I wanted it to. So now I can switch back to my other tab here. And so this is going to give me the total number of studs for this particular sheet. Then if I want to go ahead and, I'll just type in number of studs, and we can type in total cost, for example. And in this case, what I can do now is write another formula to tell me what the cost of this group of studs is going to be. So if I need it to be, do a formula, and we'll use column C, row 3, times whatever value that a particular 8-foot stud cost at this point. And I'm not exactly sure what that is off the top of my head, so I'll just assume it's $675 per stud. And it gives me a value. Now currently I haven't formatted any of these cells to show me dollars and cents, so I can go ahead and format this in Excel, set it to currency, and now I find out that roughly 30 studs is going to cost $202. And if it helps at all, what you can do And this is just the raw value here. And some, with the way Revit models certain bits of information, you're not exactly getting the 100% accurate count. And that's, by nature how Revit works. If I were to go ahead back to my Revit model here, and I'm just go back here and show you kind of what I mean. So, Revit's not truly modeling any of the stud work in here whatsoever. And then it's giving you the overall length of the wall for your calculations. So it doesn't know how to frame out corners. It doesn't know how to frame out windows. It doesn't know how to frame out, where other walls join into it, and give you sort of this T connection or anything along those lines. So what you're going to want to do, and this is true with any takeoff application that doesn't actually have, where you're not getting actual stud counts, is you're going to want to include your little markup here for, additional waste kind of information. So what at this point you could do is you could modify this formula to have a couple extra parentheses in it and add a markup. So times 1.25, let's say. And instantly that updates the number of studs that it would think that you would need and the total cost. Okay. So, and this is just based off the few walls that I have placed here. Okay, so at this point now I can go ahead and adjust this value if necessary. Maybe I want to do 3.5 just to be safe. Okay, so now I've got this set up and I can start setting up additional sheets here if I need to, 2x6 studs. Maybe I want to do 1/2-inch chipboard, 5/8-inch chip in certain areas, I believe. And you can start going through and populating some of this information. Okay, now because of the way that I set this up, it's all one workbook. If I were to overwrite this with something else, I'm going to lose that data. So what I would recommend doing is exporting everything out that you would need first. And as you go through and start building up this information, you can actually save your settings to an external source so that you can use this on multiple projects moving forward. So if I pop back down into my walls category again, I can go ahead and start to build a mass spreadsheet that has everything, or I can utilize schedules that I formatted. Okay, now the particular schedules that I've created here get into, actually calling out, it's got different filters applied for, in Revit at least, for doing 5/8 chipboard. Now, these are material takeoff schedules, so I'm going to lose all that material information simply due to the fact that the Revit API doesn't allow us to extract material information via Spreadsheet Link that way. I can't get the name, the area, or any of that stuff that is directly specific to the material itself, and that's just one of the unfortunate limitations within the Revit API. So what I need to do is begin to filter out walls that wouldn't necessarily, or I need to know what walls have 5/8 chip versus 1/2-inch chip in this case. So I would go ahead and include whatever information I need as far as area is concerned and length potentially. So in this case, I'm just going to grab area since I know that that's there. And I'm going to apply a filter by the family, the type name again, contains interior. And I might need to, there we go. So now it's giving me all my 2x4 stud walls, it's giving me all my 2x6 stud walls, as long as it has interior in the title, okay? And I can do additional sorting if I want to keep all of my 2x4 walls grouped at the top, or my 2x6 walls, or however you wanted to do it. Go ahead and filter it out as necessary, okay? And then I can go ahead and grab another schedule. So in this case, I'll yank walls out of this list. I've got my chipboard. I can go ahead now and grab sheathing. Didn't like that one. That must be formatted as a material takeoff, which is fine. I can grab just a wall schedule, which lists all walls, regardless of what they are. And again, I can go ahead and set up a different filter here to use type name again. Does not contain concrete. And just trick it into refreshing, and I'm going to come in here and double check. And oh, I should adjust that because it didn't spell it out. So if I do that now, I've come in here, verify, okay, I'm not using any concrete. And now I can export both of these at the same time. One can take care of my chipboard, the other one can take care of my walls. I could even just do a global wall schedule with length, area, and everything into one list, and come back and do my calculated values based off that. Now I've got how many studs I need out of that, I've got how much chipboard I need out of that, and so on and so forth. Okay, so depending on how you've got this formatted in Revit, or how certain things are defined, you just tweak your process a little bit based on that. So what I'm going to do is this time I will save these settings to a file, so that in the future I can start a new project, I can start generating some walls and load in these settings again. And I will use this as my wall takeoff. So I'll just call it settings, why not? Wall takeoff settings. And you could save this wherever you want. You manually load those in next time. And I will not do that. Saved it successfully. Now I can come over here and hit save, and we'll call this wall takeoff. Yes. Okay. And it set it up. Here it is. And in this case, I forgot to remove my unit symbols. Lucky me. So thankfully, it's a very simple fix. So I just go ahead and hit hide unit symbol, run through, save it out again, wall takeoff, save, replace, and here we go. And now I can go ahead and either recreate my formulas based off what I've had previously set up, or you can always pop back into a previous spreadsheet and you can actually just go ahead and copy this data. So if I wanted to, I can hit Control C, switch over to my new spreadsheet here, create a new sheet, and paste that information. And it puts it all in. And to make sure that I'm getting exactly what I want, I need to go ahead and start adjusting some of this information. Because of how I've copied it, it's bringing in the actual sheet name and Excel file name here. So theoretically, I can go ahead and have a separate Excel spreadsheet altogether, taking care of all of my different formulas, and then have that kind of linked in this way to a specific sheet. So instead of copying and pasting a whole bunch of extra information, I can just essentially create a new field here and paste this to reference back to another file that has my data in it. So in this case, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and change this value here to say wall schedule. All right, and based off the wall schedule, it pulled out an area. So that's the wrong column. I need to go ahead and adjust that column to be column E. So I can edit this row and simply change D to E in my formula. To be safe, I'm going to edit this number to be much larger just to make sure that I'm encompassing everything that I need to. And it gets everything I need, okay? And that has nothing to do, that might not be specific, to 2x4s or 2x6s. This is just all walls, okay? So if I look at my wall schedule now, for example, this is all studs. This is all my walls that I have, whether it's 2x4 or 2x6. And that's just what I did. I didn't pay attention to what rows had 2x4s, what rows had 2x6s. It's not sorted in any particular fashion. Okay, I didn't pay attention to that. The next one, say I wanted to get just chipboard, and now what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and start doing the formula here to calculate the number of pieces of JIP. So I'm going to use the same formula as my start, and edit the column first. So I want column D, and then I can come in here and adjust how I'm doing my division. So right now, column D in the wall schedule field or sheet is utilizing area, square feet. So what I can do is divide by the area of a sheet of chipboard. So say I'm using 4x8 sheets, I can divide by 32. Yes. And I forgot to put my last parenthesis back in, that's why it made that sound at me. And now it's giving me the right numbers here, okay? And at the same time, if I want, I can include, my markup of 1.25, let's say, increase the value, and then I can go ahead and build my cost parameter on this again. So if I do equals C5 times whatever the cost of a piece of sheetrock is, and maybe we'll say it's $12.85 a sheet. That's how much sheetrock I need to order to complete the project. Or for, in this case, it's just all walls that would have chipboard on it. All right, so this is a great way to get all the information. You put it all into a singular spreadsheet, and now I can distribute this information to my purchasers and additional, a handful of other individuals within the project, and they'll be able to go ahead and insert that into whatever type of database that they need. And because it's an Excel format, they have the ability to just literally take this sheet and bring it right in. And depending on what formats they need and what different calculations that they're using, we can utilize their sheets and their information in this fashion, and just kind of link their sheet up to the exports that we're getting out of Revit using Spreadsheet Link to go ahead and put all this together. And then it's nice, one workbook, one area. I can update it. If I change the model, I can push out new data and update my spreadsheets. So I can kind of constantly get a rolling value from my Revit models into our cost estimating tools. Okay, so that's kind of the key benefit and the whole point of this. So just the ability to take out the Spreadsheet Link data and push that into Revit, or into Excel, sorry. Now, the huge thing and the biggest time saver that we get here is that if the cost changes, I don't have to worry about that. We change the formulas, the cost in the spreadsheet. I don't have to come back and go ahead and start editing all of my different materials inside of Revit to change what the different costs of everything is going to be. So I don't even remember what I named some of my materials here, but I don't even have to worry about that anymore. But just to show you, if there was a material cost to this information here, I don't have to change it here, change it for my 2x6 studs. I don't have to worry about changing it for the trim, for the chipboard, sheathing, none of that. It's all managed outside like it currently is for everything else, except now it's no longer manual takeoff, so I don't have to count how many walls I have. I just get all the information as necessary. And that's the key thing, is that we're trying to streamline this process, and this process works out really well. I get everything I need here. And then you can do the same thing with your doors, you can do the same thing with your windows, and kind of move forward with that. We did just have a question come in. Scott, you want to blow that up for me? By using Spreadsheet Link rather than Kobeto, would the processes that you demonstrated save a person time? Yes, In a sense. Well, if I'm not pushing any data into Revit, which currently the process that I've highlighted does not push any data, um, not necessarily. However, we do, Kobeto is no longer a part of the BIM project suite package. So majority of new people that are purchasing the tools at this point would not get that feature. So if you currently have it and you're currently using it, yeah, that's probably the quickest way to go about doing it, because then you're generating your Excel files as individual pieces of information. The only primary difference at that point, if I'm exporting schedules to Excel from Revit, is Spreadsheet Link allows me to put it all into one workbook, where the Kobeto export would give me numerous different spreadsheets. So that's kind of the primary difference there. So good question. Thanks for that. But yeah, Kobeto is an old tool that we had for doing some Kobe standards and linking data back and forth, kind of in a similar format that we're getting here with Spreadsheet Link. However, at this point, we're no longer including it within the BIM project suite package. That's by request only at this time. So I guess what I kind of wanted to do at this point is sort of start from scratch and kind of show how maybe this would work in an environment where you've got nothing set up. You know, I've got a kind of a very set up file, and it's got the schedules formatted, it's got everything in there. So in most situations, I don't know how many of you are actually set up for anything like this inside of Revit, but we would go ahead and begin the process of putting something together. So if I go ahead and start drawing some walls, I'll just use a brick on stud wall here and just roughly put something together. Now, the more accurate that you would like to get, you know, with some of your takeoffs here, especially if you're going to start calculating, you know, top and bottom, you know, bottom sills for your walls and doubled up top plates and, you know, channels and runners and you know, things of that nature. We have to be more explicit with how we're modeling our walls. So for example, you know, if I go ahead and jump up to level 2 and put a floor in, in a lot of cases, what you know, for the most part, what we've told people in our training courses is, hey, if you extend this into the wall core and push it out to there and hit finish, hit yes to this, when you cut your sections, you know, you're all set up and ready to rock for your details. You know, it goes ahead and cuts out some of that overlapping geometry. Things look great. It's easy to detail. However, when you try to go ahead and calculate how many studs you need, you're going to get inaccurate numbers simply because this is one wall. So it's going to count these as one wall and one row of studs. You're not going to get two different sets of studs here for this. So that physically means we need to start segmenting our walls based on the levels that we're putting in here. So this wall would have to stop at level 2. I would have to go ahead and draw in another set of walls at level 2 to accommodate the same, to obtain the same condition. And that's just, oops. And that's just the nature of the beast when you're going ahead and trying to get some of the information out of Revit like we're trying to get here, is I need to physically have two different walls drawn in so I'm getting accurate counts and accurate information out of this. So it involves adjusting the way you're designing, or not, I guess not designing, modeling inside our Revit. We got to be more thoughtful of this process so that the numbers at the end of the day are closer to being accurate, and I don't have to worry about increasing the markups as much. So if you're, you know, a lot of residential home builders, you know, because it was easier on the detailing and easier on the modeling, we just said, hey, if the finishes are the same on the outside, fire it all the way up to the roof or as high as you can go, and we'll cut out the overlapping geometry. And with this process, you won't be able to do that anymore. So I'll just go ahead and you can still clean it up so that it doesn't look as you know, looks a little bit better. You only, you know, that is your level line. We're using join geometry to clean that up so the graphic itself doesn't change. The model is different. We're using two separate walls, but graphically, you can't tell that they're two separate walls. It looks clean. This will just be more I'll be a little bit more accurate with the output here. Okay. And then, same thing down below. If I wanted to go ahead and start calculating brick, and I've got a brick ledge here, maybe I'll just go ahead and show you. I would go ahead and edit the type properties of my wall here. To do this, we're going to modify the bottom edge of my brick and unlock it. Unlocking it here is going to allow me to go ahead and either just press and drag the bottom of this edge down, or physically type in what that base extension distance needs to be. 8 inches, for example, we'll knock it down like 3/4 inches. This actually will update surface area of the wall so that I can get accurate counts on my brick. It won't affect anything else. Okay, so we're going to get better counts this way just by a simple unlocking and stretching of data that I need. And we'll go to thin line so it's a little bit easier to see. All right, so as I do that, I can start getting additional information out of it. So really quick, I can go ahead and start setting up schedules. You can use a wall schedule here to go ahead and kind of create the baseline format for the data that I want to extract if I want to do it in a specific way. Okay, so I can go ahead and include information like the type of wall that I'm using. All right, and I can now include any additional information as far as area is concerned. Maybe I need to include the length. Maybe I want to include something else. Maybe you've got different stud thicknesses for the exterior walls. The primary stud thickness for the house, let's say, is a 2x6 stud. But then for the garage, maybe it's the same finish, but we're using 2x4 studs. So I may want to include some unique information within a property within the wall, so that I can use that as part of my filtering process to get it out of Spreadsheet Link, so I can get accurate counts based on a 2x4 stud wall versus a 2x6 stud wall. Maybe I've got different pieces. Maybe some walls have gyp and some don't. That makes it easy, because that's a whole nother wall type as it is. So in this case, I don't have anything set up for it, so maybe I'm going to go ahead real quick and back out of here and add that. So I got type, area, length. If you needed to, 2015 now allows to include the unconnected height of a wall within a schedule. So on some of maybe interior walls don't run full height. Maybe they stop off at 6 feet. Before, there was really no way of doing that without putting in another calculated value into your schedules to find out that it was truly 6 feet tall. Now I can just schedule that value. There's no work and no monkeying around to get the right data out of this. So I'll start there, and we'll sort by type for now. So here's my list. It shows me all the walls, tells me what the height of these walls is, so if necessary I can get some more accurate data out of it later on down the road. But for example, if I if I wanted to go ahead and adjust some of this information here, maybe here we're using what do I want to do? Oh yeah, I'm going to go up to the second floor for this example here, and I'm going to make a new wall type here, and I'm going to call it, we'll do a 2x4 stud wall, let's say. Edit type, duplicate, brick on metal stud 2x4, and we'll call it brick on stud. I'm not too concerned about that. We'll change this, 0 space 3.5. All right, I'll realign my materials here, and I'm going to rename this one to be 2x6. Oops. And we'll just make it a little bit more accurate. Make this 5.5 inch, so that at least I'm getting some, dimensionally everything's accurate now. So when I go back to my schedule here, it's going to show me the differences between the walls. I've got 2x4 wall, I've got a 2x6 wall, and now I can filter by this. So if I wanted to export just 2x6 data, I can. If I wanted to export just 2x4 data, I can. And that would maybe involve creating separate schedules so that the data is there. So I can go ahead and duplicate this schedule. I will rename this one to be wall, or we'll just call it what it is, 2x6 walls. And we'll rename this one to be 2x4 walls. And all that is then is a simple filter inside of Revit. Filter by type. I gotta add family and type to this. Oh, that's right. Sorry. I forgot how I got this to work in Revit. We have better filtering options inside of Spreadsheet Link, but in Revit I had to go ahead and filter by type mark, in which case then I was adding 2x4 and 2x6 into the type mark value so I could get the numbers that I wanted. I forgot about that. So used to doing these exports out of Spreadsheet Link because we get so much more better filtering options. So I'll grab this, edit type, find my type mark. You know, you wouldn't necessarily always use type mark in this case simply because we're using type mark for other values, like the wall type values, type A, type B. I'm just using this because it was easy and right there in front of me. You can use other parameters, like you can custom build your own parameters for this process. You can use descriptions and type marks, and type comments and things like that. Why do I keep typing in type mark? All right. So we got that. Come back to here, filter, type mark equals 2x4. It's already done. That's all I'm seeing. 2x6, filter, add type mark. Filter by type mark equals 2x6. And that's all I get now. And then I can go ahead and, as I add interior partitions and 2x4 stud walls, 2x6 stud walls, and so on and so forth, even as I start adding concrete, I'm going to only get what the filters are allowing me to get. So everything is going to be, based on how I set this up. And you can include as much information here as you want, as long as it's not a material takeoff schedule in Revit. If it's a standard object schedule, it'll work beautifully. Okay. So now I can come back to my Express Tools, run my Spreadsheet Link, switch my my available categories option here to show me my schedules, grab them both, and you'll notice here it's no longer running my filter process for me. So, but because I set the filter up, I know what to do to get it to filter. So I can come to my 2x6 wall filters and include a filter within this. In this case, I can use type name or type mark. I'll just use type mark because that's what I went with. And I will set it up exactly the same. 2x6 wall, so this is going to equal 2x6. Gives me what I need. Switch to my 2x4 walls and do the same thing with 2x4. Oops. Type mark equals 2x4. Then the final thing is to make sure I had my unit symbol. Now I can save these settings out. So if anytime I run a project and I want to quantify or have a consistent format every single time, I can save this to a file, store it on the network, blink it in or bring it back into any project at any time and run with it. I don't have to go through and set up what schedules are available, what filters to assign to those different schedules, how it's sorting, what parameters are available. It's going to do it all for me. There's no replication of work. So you do it one time and you're good to go. I'll do my project export settings, we'll call it. Put it on the network, make it available to everyone in your office to share. They can all use it. They don't even really need to know how it was configured as long as it's giving them the right data. Save. Sure, I can create, sorted template settings for Excel, so it's always going to bring me the same set of data every time. No replication of information here, or it's always the same. And now I can run with it, and I can hit save. It saves a workbook for me, all my tabs. Call it project 1, and then I would go in and start linking to my formulas or my calculations sheet, or start copying and pasting my calcs in there as I see fit, and proceed on with the process. And that's kind of, that kind of wraps everything up. I mean, certain ways to set it up inside of Revit to simplify the process, to bring it back into Excel via Spreadsheet Link. And again, the primary benefit to this is getting it all grouped into one location, so that you don't have 15 different files to work with. It's a little bit more familiar to the person who's actually going to be doing the quantifications out of this. It's all in one location, series of workbooks, one page full of all your formulas and data that they need to bring into their cost estimating software that they're using. With that, I'd like to, it looks like we're good on questions at the moment. So I'm going to switch back to hand it back over to Scott, if I can find my PowerPoint here. There we go. And thank you.